We don't have a lot of empty spaces on this program today, maybe a blank space, but Pete Thamel joins us to top it off. I'm sure Pete's a Taylor Swift fan, so we got all the connections on. Pete, I've been walking around trying to find out what smart guys like you have been looking into. It seems like we're on a pretty familiar theme down here, aren't we?
I think these are going to be known as the Jeopardy meetings, Paul, where all answers are in the form of a question. That is we are in an era of ambiguity, and people are very anxious to tell us that they don't know anything. They won't know anything for a while. They're not particularly certain who's going to determine anything over the next couple of months. We obviously have the settlement. We are now in the aftermath of the settlement, and we are in an era of unknown.
Yeah, I know you've talked to a lot more of these coaches than I have, but the best conversations I've had were just by happenstance. I got in the elevator about an hour ago to go up, and I forgot my computer or something. And it's an SEC head coach. You know his name, and he was complaining the whole way. He said, we don't know anything. I mean, it's like, you make $9 million a year. Would you just calm down for a second?
That's where we are, and I do empathize with the coaches on this. I think in 5 days, Paul, we're like May 28th right now, official visits start. So this is really a month-long push. Coaches who tend to complain really complain about June right now. That is one of their hobby horses of complaints other than not knowing anything. And they're going to have hundreds of prospects on campus, many of them in the class of 2025. Many of those prospects know that there's revenue sharing and are going to want to know how much revenue is going to be shared with them. And these coaches have no idea how to answer those questions. So I do empathize with the fact that here's the reality of the future coming at them, and they may not have those answers for months, Paul.
How much of it is that, and I want you to address the roster management issue, because as we were going off the air yesterday, we were derailed by a long meeting with the commissioner, and I suspect that was what the subject was, if I'm reading your writing correctly.
Yes, another pithy takeaway from these meetings, SEC coaches really want and need walk-ons. And so we'll go inside baseball a little bit on the language of the settlement as it has been told to us. Part of the reason we're having this antitrust settlement is because people are suing because of limitations, right? So there used to be scholarship limits, 85 in football. I think it's 11-7 in baseball. There's some goofy numbers, just how it's all chopped up. So this settlement is saying, okay, no more limits, but then rosters have to be capped. So in theory, if we capped rosters in football at 100, you'd have 100 scholarship players. And that way there's some uniformity. Well, the notion, and again, this isn't cemented, but the potential of there being the elimination of walk-ons really has these SEC football coaches and other coaches too, really has them unnerved. Part of it is that's all their backup specialists. That's how they practice. Those are the scout team. Those are the twos. If you have to practice all your best players, there's more, you can't rest them. There's more of a chance of injury, etc. So I really feel like Kirby Smart stood on the table for walk-ons yesterday. I mean, I can go through the list. Every coach who basically stood up in defense of walk-ons. And now part of it is like, I can't see a world without walk-ons, Paul. I just can't. I just think if you think about Hunter Renfrow, you think about Stetson Bennett, you think about Baker Mayfield, J.J. Watt. We could list a whole show full of great feel-good stories of walk-ons, and I just don't feel like we're going to get there because, again, that would come to some sort of limitation. It would mean regular students on campus essentially cannot go out for the football team unless they're going to be given a scholarship.
And I know it's fairly easy for all of us to understand, but to the passerby who just flipped us on, explain what all this means exactly to that question. Why can't they do what they've always done?
So there are going to be roster caps.
Okay.
We don't know what the rosters are going to be capped at. That is sort of part of this aura of ambiguity that's hanging out right now over the sport, and the coaches want answers to those questions. So because of that cap, the thought would be within that cap, every player on the team has a scholarship up to that cap, if that makes sense. So there's no more scholarship limitations. There's just everyone has a uniform roster size. Now, you could choose in baseball, say they cap the roster at 30. You could choose to have 30 scholarship players, or you could choose to have 11 if you're in the Northeast and you don't care as much about baseball. You could choose to keep it at 11.7, which it is now. So the thought is in football, walk-ons are the most vibrant part of football more than any other sport. In baseball, it's a lot of partial scholarships. Okay, come here, we'll pay for half. Come here, we'll pay for a quarter, whatever it is. And so the thought in football is the coaches now are saying, here's like a hypothetical. Would the coaches rather have 85 scholarship players, or would they rather have 75 scholarship players and then 30 walk-ons to help them run a functional practice, scout team, etc.? So, I mean, Mike Elko was the most pointed about this. Now, look, the 12th man is over a century of tradition at Texas A&M, from a fan running down from the, a fan coming down to play for them in, I think, 1922 it was. So that's a vibrant part of that. You look at a program like Nebraska, they have, and I'm throwing a number out here, 140 players, and they have this rich history of walk-ons becoming that. So it would really cut into a lot of like the fabric of what college football is. I do think in a year from now, Paul, when we're at these meetings, we're going to say, hey, remember last year at these meetings when everyone threw a fit about walk-ons? And I think there is a solution available with a lot of smart people in the room. I don't think the plaintiffs' attorneys who are on the other side of this are going to sit there and argue, we can't have walk-ons anymore. That doesn't seem like that's something that they're really going to want to pull out of the bag. So I think there will be some sort of even-minded solution. Is it some sort of practice squad where a guy can called up on scholarship to play? But I do think the opportunity to go play football somewhere. I mean, Kirby Smart was he was indignant at the notion of it. Now, he and others were very clear. They're like, we don't know the rules of engagement yet. Right. So they don't want to put the cart before the horse. But he basically said, who could possibly not want walk-ons? So it's strained credulity to him that just the mere notion.
So beyond the numbers, roster management question, I mean, there's 1,000 answers to this question, but what is the next burning conversation going on, presidents, ADs, and coaches?
So I would think the biggest burning question in the walk-ons and the roster caps, to be honest, is Title IX and how you look at it. Let's use $20 million as the rough number. Okay. There is no instruction right now whether $10 million of that goes to women's sports and $10 million goes to men's sports, or Arkansas, just to use an alphabetical order school, Alabama, they could take $18.5 million and put it towards football and then chop up the rest in how it goes. So, or 15 or whatever. Are you going to have to start from a point of half, Paul? Or are you going to have full autonomy over how to use your share of the revenue share? And I just don't think that answer is coming. Scott Strickland, the Florida athletic director, was just asked about it, and he was basically like, look, we'd like some guidance, because if it becomes a school-by-school risk issue, that becomes thorny. I mean, that's going to be really hard for presidents to say, you know what, we're going to risk some Title IX implications here, and we're going to put all our chips behind football. But I would think there's going to be a lot of pressure on these presidents to do that. One thing presidents don't like to do, they don't like to make decisive decisions, and they don't like to make decisions that are going to be criticized. And obviously, if you put $18 million just towards football and you kind of go out on a limb without any direction, now, I guess to put that conversation to bow, Jeffrey Kessler has been widely quoted saying, I think somebody's going to have to sue and then a judge is going to decide how this happens, which gets us a little bit back to where we were in the first place before the settlement. You hope the prevailing hope with the settlement was, okay, let's get out of the cycle of going to court and having a judge to decide our fate. But that is a huge, huge teeming issue right now. Now, again, if you still wanted to dedicate $20 million, you have $10 million for football, then you could take the other $10 million and do it out of your collective. That would be the thought. But yeah, there is. Yes, it is jeopardy, Paul. All answers are in form of a question.
Who is Pete Thamel? And the answer is he has just been our first guest. Thank you so much, Pete. Really appreciate it.